Hey there, I'm Dr. Richard Day, and welcome to the Chiro Business Mojo podcast. So pleased to have you with us here today. You know, we continue to see our numbers grow, and we are so excited for those who have been listening to us and sharing us with other people, and welcome to those who are joining us for the first time. One of the things we've done since we retooled our podcast, we've been doing this a couple of years, but we took a break and we came back with a renewed focus. And so one of those things we decided to do was really focus on the chiropractors that you need to know about that maybe you haven't heard of. Now, there are lots of gurus in our profession, and some of them are really good. In fact, we have had them on our show. But what we want to do is focus maybe on the people that you haven't heard of that you should learn from and hear of and know about. A lot of us have started practices within the last 5 to 10 years, and I think there's a lot we can learn from each other. And so one of those guests we are having on today is someone who was in school, actually finishing up school around the time my wife was in school, and I was. And I didn't know her personally, but I remember there was this person that was doing handstands and yoga stretches out on a hill at our old campus, and didn't know who she was, but other people did and kind of heard, oh, she's into yoga and things like that. Well, fast forward to today, and she has got a really big, beautiful, thriving yoga and chiropractic practice hybrid. She's built a brand. She's done more than just build a practice. She has built a brand from the ground up. And so she's going to share her story today and some of the things that she has learned along the way. So her name is Dr. Sarah Kucera. She's the founder of Sage Center for Yoga and Healing Arts, and that's a wellness sanctuary. It's located in the heart of Crossroads. That's a district here in Kansas City. She's a licensed chiropractor, registered yoga teacher, certified Ayurvedic practitioner, and in addition to all that, she's an entrepreneur and a healthcare provider, but she's a writer. She's contributed to print and online publications, and she's authored a book. It's called The Ayurvedic Self-Care Handbook, a holistic healing rituals for It's called the Ayurvedic Self-Care Handbook, Holistic Healing Rituals for Every Day and Season. So I'm excited to listen to this. I've listened to parts of this interview, but not the whole thing, but I'm looking forward to hearing all of these great secrets. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Haley.
Okay. Hey, Dr. Kucera, I'm so excited to have you on today.
Thanks for having me.
Yes. So can you start by telling us a little bit about how you got into chiropractic?
I'll give you the short story, which is just that I finished my undergraduate degree in exercise science, and I knew that I wanted to do something a little bit more. And my thought was that I was going to go into physical therapy. But after doing a lot of volunteer hours with that, it really didn't resonate with me as I thought that it would. And so I worked for a little bit in corporate wellness and, realized that really wasn't what I wanted to do. And so I started looking at some of my other options, and I really wanted to deal with a medicine that was more with the musculoskeletal system and had to do with movement. And, being an ortho didn't really seem my speed. I didn't really want to do like surgeries, and prescribing medications wasn't really something that I wanted to do. I wanted to do more what was kind of like physical therapy, but sort of like physical therapy before you had a problem that needed that kind of tending to. So I just kind of, was exploring my options a little bit and realized that chiropractic school was really offering exactly what I wanted, because I would get to learn about movement and the musculoskeletal system and the nervous system, but then I'd get all the other classes along with it as well. So that's kind of the short of how I ended up in chiropractic school.
Okay. So had you had any experience with chiropractic, or?
I had been to a chiropractor maybe once, and
okay.
I worked with someone who had a spouse who was a chiropractor. So I was exposed to it, but it wasn't that I grew up receiving chiropractic care. I didn't come from a family of chiropractors. I know that's really common because a lot of people I was in school with, they came from families, whether they're like uncle or their dad, someone in their family was a chiropractor, but I was fresh.
Yeah, that was kind of how I was. I probably should have gone to a chiropractor, but no one ever recommended it to me. And then my boyfriend at the time worked for a chiropractor, and he wanted to switch jobs. And I said, well, I'll take that job because I need something right now. And I started working with a chiropractor and fell in love with it too. So that's kind of my story. we're kind of in the same area, and I've heard a lot about your center. It's called Sage Center for Yoga and Healing Arts. Can you tell us about it?
Sure. This is a center. We're in the heart of the crossroads of downtown Kansas City. So we're in the Arts District, and we're in an older building that's brick, and we renovated it so that we could have all of the services that we offer, which we have yoga, and we also have Ayurveda, which is considered to be the sister science to yoga. And it's kind of the more medicinal side that deals more with the body when we think of yoga as dealing more with the mind. And then, of course, we have chiropractic care. We also have other body work that would encompass massage as well. But then there's Ayurvedic body work that we use too. And we also have an esthetician. And we have a fairly large retail area where, and herbal apothecary, because I also mix herbs for my Ayurveda clients. And we sell things ranging from herbal supplements to yoga accessories and just things that you might need for like a spiritual journey, journals, a lot of stuff.
And you didn't start out that way. So what was the path, your chiropractic path, like after school? What took you to that?
Well, the order of how I arrived at all of these things actually started with yoga. And I was practicing yoga, was a student of yoga before I became a student of chiropractic. And I felt that what my yoga teachers were teaching me and the way that they were describing things to me made so much more sense than how my professors were explaining things at times. And, professors are smart, but I felt like they had embodied what our teachers in chiropractic college were talking about. So I felt like there was a missing piece. And I thought, these two practices really fit together. And because I personally have embodied what these things are and could understand why someone's trying to say like stretch their hamstrings and it's not working for them, I can kind of pick up on that really quickly because I have an experience now with seeing bodies, but I also have moved in my own body. The two seem to go really well together. So when I started practicing, it was important to me. And when I say practicing as a chiropractor is what I mean, It was important to me that yoga was coupled with that, because how could I ignore the fact that I had all this experience with something that could help someone and not use it? So I started my practice out of a yoga studio and basically just started seeing people who were students there. And I would do not lengthy yoga practices with them, but there wasn't many that I wouldn't assign, one or two yoga asanas or postures for them to do that would help be a complement to what they were receiving from me as a chiropractor in terms of care. So that's how I started practicing right out of school. And that felt like home to me. I was seeing the people that I wanted to see. They were healthy for the most part. They were interested in being healthy, which was very different than when I was in the student clinic. I felt like everyone was relying on me to make them better. And I didn't really want that. In fact, I think that thinking back now with why physical therapy wasn't as interesting to me, I felt like when I was volunteering in those days, it was like doing things to people that they really didn't want to have done to them. And they were crying. So when it comes down to seeing a patient that is healthy and is invested in their health, that's who I wanted to see. And that's who I was seeing. So that evolved because my practice grew. And of course, my own personal interest grew and my professional interest grew to where I studied Ayurveda and began to weave that into what I was doing. And in the meantime, the studio where I was practicing, the owner decided she was going to move. She was relocating. And so I took over the entire space, which at that time would have been yoga and Ayurveda and chiropractic, just in a much smaller location, which is actually just 2 blocks away from where we are now.
Okay.
So we've been in our space now, which is the more full-fledged setup, for just over 5 years. and it's about 3 times the size of where I first started.
Okay. What can you, your first office in the first yoga studio, how big would you say it was?
Well, picture a yoga studio, if you might.
Uh-huh.
And if you've never been to a yoga studio, picture like an exercise room at a gym. Mm-hmm. It was like that. So the studio itself was probably around 1,000 square feet. And when I say I practiced out of the studio, I mean I was literally practicing out of the open space. So okay. I had 2 portable tables that I would set up at the beginning of the day. And the reason why I had 2 is because I couldn't change the height on a portable table in 0 seconds flat like I needed to. Mm-hmm. And that would allow me to have one at a height where I could do certain types of adjusting or certain, I would do Graston, and I have been doing that since I first started, and those kinds of techniques. So I needed 2 tables that I could work with. So I would set up these 2 tables. And then when it would be time for class, I would put them away in a small closet. And then when class was over, I would bring the tables out again. And I did that every day. And I can't remember, it was at one point I calculated how many times I had set up that table approximately. And it was like tens of thousands of times.
I think that's great though, because I think the students, you're in school and you have this perfect idea of the perfect space and the perfect this and the perfect that. And, sometimes you just got to get started. You just got to do what works. So.
For sure. And that was my perfect, it wasn't the same. I felt like I couldn't be categorized in the same way. Like when someone says, my chiropractor does this, or my chiropractor uses this table that rolls. And I'm like, well, I could never have that here because that can't be portable,
Yeah.
And that didn't matter to me because that wasn't what I wanted to do in the first place. But there was someone that I remember had kind of scoffed at what I was doing and was like, I heard that she's setting up these tables in the middle of a room. And honestly, it was quite beautiful because it had these old wood floors and these huge, this huge wall of windows that there was just like incredible light coming in. And it actually was super warm and comforting. And I would rather have received care than in, any other clinic that I had ever been to. So yeah, it's not that your perfect practice is your perfect practice. It's not what you've visited necessarily, which is why I started my own. I wasn't visiting things that felt like they resonated. They were so sterile feeling.
Yeah. Well, your space is so beautiful. I haven't actually been there, but I have looked online and I do plan to come down. I would like to come down and see it. So, so did you have a business plan? Was this a vision, or did you have to create a business plan to create the space you're in now? To
create the space that we are in currently, I had to have a plan. I can't say that it was the type of business plan that you would set up when you're starting a business, but I definitely had to have a plan. I will say that I had a plan when I first started, and I basically scrapped all of it. But it was helpful to create a plan. But that didn't go. I did not go according to my plan. And when I took over the entire space and absorbed the yoga studio into my chiropractic practice, that was relatively immediate, and I did not have a plan for that. So when we transferred to a different place, when we moved our location, I was kind of backpedaling to put some of these practices in place that I really wanted to have in the first place, but I couldn't. For example, I didn't have anyone scheduling. I didn't have an office assistant. I didn't have any of those things. So when we moved to our new location where we actually had space that would accommodate those things, and we needed that, there are elements like that had to be in place, not just the financials of a business plan. But I definitely needed a plan because we had a pretty big build out in our current space, and I couldn't have done that without a plan.
Mm-hmm. Did you do that all at once, or kind of piece by piece?
All at once.
Wow.
Head first.
So what is your role in the business? Do you treat patients still?
I treat patients. Right now I'm wearing a lot of hats, and I think that you go from wearing one hat to many hats, and then you're trying to get back to maybe one hat. Mm-hmm. And part of that's figuring out which hat fits you the best. But my role is to oversee all of the operations. I do see patients 3 full days a week, and then 2 days where I kind of plug in just as needed. And I try to reserve those days for offsite meetings or just admin things that we might not get done, that I might not get done during the week otherwise. And so I see patients, and that's in the scope of being a chiropractor and an Ayurvedic practitioner. I also teach a few yoga classes a week, and I have a couple of private yoga clients that I work with. And I kind of do a little bit of everything right now.
You're juggling all the balls.
All the balls. All the balls in the air all the time.
How many other providers do you have in the space?
We have one other chiropractor. We have 5 massage therapists, but we only have 2 working at once. We have one esthetician who does more of a holistic skincare. When I say skincare, I feel like people think of just like the superficial type of skincare, but when you receive a treatment from her, you feel like you've just had your entire soul treated. So,
I've heard it's unbelievable. Actually.
Yeah, it's pretty unbelievable.
Yeah, I've heard it's great.
Yeah, she's amazing. And then we have 7 yoga teachers in our rotation, between having full-time teachers and having people that sub for us. And we have 3 people that work at our front desk, 2 that are more regular and cover more of our managerial duties. So payroll for me is probably around 16 people each time.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, this is Dr. Rich, and we will return to this great interview in just a second. But first, I want to speak to the chiropractic students and those who maybe just graduated. How successful could you be if you had a resource that helped clarify your vision, helped you develop a plan, saved you money, time, and heartache, shortened your learning curve, and helped set you on a course to become profitable in your first few months after opening? Well, that information can be found in our Chiro Planner. Yes, Dr. Haley and I have written a book. It's more than just a journal. It's a guide to creating and launching your practice in 100 days. It's jam-packed with tools, tips, ideas, action steps, resources, and inspiring quotes from some of the top chiropractors and business leaders today, including some of the great guests we have had on this show. So think of it as your own personal mentor, inspiring you, answering your questions, helping you to set goals, and advising you on the many unknowns of opening a practice. Go to chiroplanner.com today to order your copy. Now back to the interview.
So payroll for me is probably around 16 people each time.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So are any of them independent contractors, or they're all employees?
We have a split. So each person is sort of set up based off of our own agreement with one another. So everyone's a little bit different. Mm-hmm.
Different. Okay. How long did it take for you to feel like, wow, this is working? Or
I don't know.
I only know
because it is. Yeah.
Some days it feels like it's working. Some days you're like, well, I don't know.
Well,
is that the case?
Yeah, we had a really rough transition into our new space because, as construction always does, it took much longer than they had estimated. It was 2 months longer than they had said. And I had planned in a month of overlap just in case, but we weren't notified in time to keep at least another month on our current lease. So we were actually homeless for a month because we couldn't move into our new space. And we didn't have anywhere to go. We had to be out of our old space. And starting off like that took quite a long time to recover because I had just put basically every single penny that I had into creating the space between build out, hiring new people, getting new tables, new equipment, and even things just like decorations and all the little things like that. So I basically was starting in the hole without anywhere to practice. for a month. And it's not like I have a marketing business where I could just go to a coffee shop and work or work from home. So that's a little bit different. You can't see patients necessarily out of your live space. So that rocky start, it took probably at least 2 years for me to feel like this is working. And what really made me feel like this is working is not financials, not how I was feeling, not how many patients I had or how many clients everyone else had, but it was really seeing the community that we had developed, which is, it's just uncomparable to anything because everyone is so supportive. Everyone's connected to one another. If a yoga student gets sick or their spouse gets sick, it's not unusual for another yoga student to bring soup in for them or to take it to their house. It's like everyone is so close knit within our community. And that's what to me feels like it's working. It really has nothing to do with the entire business side of it. So if you ask me more on the business side of it, that's an everyday, is it working today? Yeah. But I'd say a good 3 years.
Yeah. I think there's two things there. The momentum, it's so hard to recover from a momentum loss like that. And it just is it's like a living thing. And when it takes away, it's hard to grab back onto it. And then, the community thing is so important. I think that's been really important in our practice. And I think if that's part of your vision for it to be a home almost of like to you, then it does start to feel like that.
Yeah. And, we have people come in that the actual words that have come out of someone's mouth, they said, I'm home, because they feel like they belong where, in our space. And even just times like, I don't want to bring like political views into things, but the election was really hard on a lot of people in our community. And the day after the election, we had people coming in all day crying. And it was because they knew that we were a safe space for them to just kind of break down. And that's not something that you put in a business plan.
No, I like that. That's a good quote. So do you guys, kind of switching topics here, do you use an EHR? Do you do insurance, anything like that?
We do. We are only in network right now with 2 companies. We're in network with Blue Cross Blue Shield and Aetna, and that we had just we dropped some people after we just weren't super happy with how things were going. And we have used Mac Practice since I started. And so we do all our claims electronically. Everything's electronic for us, all our records, everything.
That's not one I've heard of. What are some other office tools that you use to keep overhead low and run things more efficiently?
I like to be very minimal in everything that we do. So not having a lot of needs, like I should say, is really how we keep things low. So I guess maybe what I want to say is that we don't have a lot of fluff, like we don't have TVs, we don't have things that I feel for us are just kind of useless, or they're just kind of a waste of space for the environment that we have created. But we also streamline things we have a point of sale system that we use that it doesn't necessarily talk with our EHR, but that's a central location for all of our transactions, for everything from retail to tracking yoga students' classes to ringing up massages, chiropractic, all of that gets run through that point of sale. We also do online scheduling, which we could not live without. There's just too much happening in our space that we don't schedule our classes. You don't have to sign up for our yoga classes. That's one thing that we've avoided because it feels like something that's unnecessary for us. And so, we have we use different systems like that to kind of keep things minimal. And I think minimal is really, even with the systems that we're using, when we can be as minimal as possible, that's really important to me.
I like that. I didn't, until you started talking, I didn't think about all of those different things you would need to keep track of all of the stuff you have.
It's a lot. Yeah. So we can't run everything through one system, just because we aren't only a chiropractic office.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How do you market the business? What works the best for you?
Marketing, it's so funny. I had such a aversion to marketing for such a long time because in my mind, marketing was sales, and I'm not a salesperson. I'm not a salesy type. I often don't even tell people that like I own the space, I that's not really my style. And so once I realized like, oh, marketing is just basically telling people that you exist. That changed my perspective. So we market mainly just through social media, quite frankly, and we don't spend money on really anything. I marketed for the first 7 years of my practice purely through word of mouth. I never spent a dime on marketing, and we've never run a print ad. We've never done anything, even like online ads without, outside of social media. Mm-hmm. It's all of the free stuff, and word of mouth is our thing. And I think isn't word of mouth the top way to market? I feel like I
think it builds a stronger
mm-hmm.
practice.
Yeah.
When we started our practice in Colorado and we moved away, we kept the practice and had an associate there. And I think if you look at the schedule today, there's, probably half the schedule are people who saw us because it was our community, kind of like you created your community. I feel like it's stronger. It succeeds through time. And I think it is definitely the number one way. There's no gimmicks to it.
Right. And marketing, it's not that I don't believe that marketing isn't worth it. It's just right now. And actually, maybe I should backtrack because I do feel like we need to start putting some marketing in place for some things that we do that people aren't fully aware. But in general, like building our entire business, we did not do a lot of marketing at all.
Mm-hmm. Well, I saw there's still 2,000 people who found you on Facebook. Yeah. So you didn't, are they just finding you or you share or do you post stuff?
They probably just kind of find us in some way. I don't know where those people came from, but I'm happy they're there.
That's great.
Yeah, we share some things, but we don't have any kind of real strategy in place. I'd say the strategy for us is really always being authentic. We don't like to feel like we have to post a certain amount of times. We just when we want to share something, we share it, and we aren't necessarily on a schedule for sharing or anything like that. And yeah, those people I think have been kind of in our community for a long time. So actually that number is probably low considering that we've been in existence for as long as we have.
No, I don't. Believe me, I look at chiropractic pages all the time. I think that's pretty good. I think, unfortunately, people are trying to be authentic now rather than just starting to be authentic. So, well, so now let's switch. I want to talk about your book. You have a book out. Tell us about it. What's the name of it and how it came about?
My book is called The Ayurvedic Self-Care Handbook, and it's a book. First, you have to know a little bit about Ayurveda to know what the book is about. You don't have to know about Ayurveda to read the book. But I mentioned earlier that Ayurveda is called the sister science to yoga. And it's sort of, I think the fast way to explain this is that if you know what Chinese medicine is or you've heard of acupuncture, this is very similar in its philosophies and approach and different methods, but we don't necessarily do acupuncture with it. It's a form of medicine that we use different lifestyle changes, dietary changes, herbs for healing. And I studied this. I actually have my master's degree in Ayurveda, and my thesis work was on the impact of routine on someone's health, because what I was seeing in my practice was I kept seeing people that were doing what, if you looked at it by textbook, it seemed like it was the right thing to be healthy, but they would have major complaints from, not having good energy. Their sleep wasn't great. Maybe they needed to lose weight and they couldn't lose weight. And it really came down to the fact that they just had the most erratic schedule and that there wasn't enough really grounding them. So it was giving them anxiety. It was interfering with their ability to digest food. It was interfering with their energy. And when I realized this, I really wanted to create something that helped people understand this. So it started with my thesis work, which I did just a small pilot study to ask people about their health, their current health conditions, and the things that they do throughout their day and if they're consistent or not. And I really found that the healthiest people were the people that were doing the same things at the same time every day. So they ate their breakfast, lunch, and dinner at the same time. They would exercise at the same time. And understanding that and understanding Western medicine, circadian medicine, I felt like it was something that was being missed in pretty much every health practice that I was doing. And then also just, people that I know that are different healthcare providers. And so weaving those concepts together, I created this book so that not only I could share with people and have greater outreach to maybe people that I've never met, but even just my own patients and clients to be able to hand them this book and say, I want you to understand the stuff in this first. And, let's talk about how you can implement these things before we talk about adding herbs or adding different things, create a good foundation for health first.
I'm very interested now.
Yeah.
Come see your space and get the book. So how long ago did you have the idea for it? How long have you been wanting to write it?
I have always wanted to write a book, and I think I've flipped back and forth from different topics. And honestly, when you think about writing a book, I don't know anyone that has written a book. Well, I do now, but at the time I didn't know anyone. And when you don't have someone in your current surrounding that's done something, you kind of think of it as maybe being impossible. And I just realized, you know what, this isn't impossible. And I had created an outline for it probably in 2016, and was just I just kind of kept it. I didn't really do anything with it. And then it was in 2017, at the end of 2017, someone that I knew through social media was creating just a little book club of people that were writing books. And I was like, well, I want to be a part of that because I have this outline for a book. And we would meet online. It was a virtual group. And we would just kind of go through the process together and talk about where our progress was and talk about book proposals and things that you need to do to get a publisher. And the actual process between me starting my book proposal. So the order goes like this. I wrote a book proposal, which had some sample chapters in it. And then a few months after that, I sent my proposal off to a literary agent that I wanted to represent me. And he said yes. And he then sent my proposal. We tweaked it a little bit. And he sent my proposal to probably about 15 different publishers that he felt would be a good fit for me. And then a month later, I signed with a publisher. So it's actually super crazy, I think, because the process between me I signed my contract with my publisher, and within 7 months, I was done with the entire process. My book was done. And my book was published less than a year from signing that contract with my publisher. So that's actually really fast. That happened really fast.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. So what you met with your group? Were there other habits did you set time aside 2 days a week or what to get it done?
As soon as I had a contract, I did take 2 days a week that were my dedicated writing days. And a dedicated writing day, if you've written anything of any length at all, could be great and it could be awful. If you sit down to write, you may writer's block is a real thing, and you might not really actually write anything. And then some days you're writing thousands of words. And I took 2 days a week that would allow me to either write or to feel like I wasn't getting anything done. And and then would fill in gaps, here and there, during the evenings and on weekends too. And it really was just, in terms of how that worked for me, was just, I really wanted to do it. And it's so true that when you really want something bad enough, you're just going to make time for it. Like, that just became a priority. And even if one day I didn't really feel like writing, I'd still get my laptop out and just kind of start clicking away. And then I'd feel like I was in the groove of things. And then that felt really good. And yeah, it was a lot of work, for sure. It's a lot of work to write a book, run a business, be a practitioner in the business, and then also to attempt to have some kind of social life at the same time. Yeah.
But you did it. And I think, it's important. You have priorities, and what is a priority to you and what means a lot to you is what you're putting your energy to, whether you believe it or not. So that's awesome.
Yes.
What kind of advice would you have for a new doctor or someone who's about to graduate?
I think the best advice, which I never received, but I give to everyone, is to practice in a way that you want to practice. And that doesn't mean that you're going to do that from the beginning, like I did. I kind of did it by default, but you might be practicing with other people and learn the things that you like about their practice and their approach. And they may resonate with you and they may not. And it doesn't mean that there's only one way to do things. And of course, in the chiropractic field, I think that's so true, because chiropractors are rarely ever exactly the same. And that's a huge advantage. So I think really being clear on what it is that you want and the lifestyle that you want and how many days you want to work, having all that in mind right away will set you up for what you really want to do.
Yeah, I think working in an office or shadowing in offices and really figuring out, how different ones operate and what you like and what you don't like is important. I worked in several offices before I had graduated, so it allowed me to, but I still would think it was overwhelming to me because I had worked in a bigger practice and I thought it's got to be that big. And then I'd visit a smaller practice and think, oh no, it doesn't.
Right.
But you got to figure out what speaks to you. And that's awesome. What about an experienced doc that might be stuck? What would you tell them?
Oh, that's a good one. That's a good question. I think if you feel stuck, you have to sort through. So I actually have a chapter in my book about this. It's not specifically to chiropractic, but it could definitely work in the same way. It's really just about any time that you feel stuck, that you have to look at what is energizing you and what is taking energy from you. And when you really look at your practice and you dissect out, like, do I like seeing the number of patients that I'm seeing? Do I like seeing the type of patient that I'm seeing? Is that giving me energy or is that taking energy away from me? Because I think if you feel stuck, you're more than likely not being fueled. And when I say energy, it's really like, what is feeding your soul? And if you're feeling stuck, you're not getting fed. And you've got to figure out what are the things that are draining you and what are the things that are really making you feel alive and empowered.
You are just the person for that question. They should go buy your book.
They should buy my book.
That's step one.
Step one, buy the book. Step two, yeah.
What's another favorite book you would recommend?
Well, since we're talking business, I think one of my favorite business books, which is pretty old at this point, is called The E-Myth, or The E-Myth Revisited. Mm-hmm. And it's really about getting started in your own business and understanding your role as like a manager, the creative, the technician, and understanding all of that together. And I think that's a book that probably, after you've had your business for many years, you could kind of go back and look at it and learn from it all over again.
Yeah, we get that one a lot. A lot of people recommend it. We've both read it. It's a great book, and we've recommended it to students, of course, too. What's a great way for people to connect with you? How can they find you? Your super popular Facebook page.
Yeah. Well, social media is a great way to connect. So we have a website for our center, which is experiencesage.com, and you can contact us through the website. I have a personal website since I do some things outside of our center, which is my name, Sarah with an H, S-A-R-A-H, Kucera, Kucera.com. And I can be contacted through that too. So all my contact information is there. But honestly, social media has really become one of my favorite ways to connect with people. And my Instagram page, my personal Instagram page is Sarah_Kucera. And that's kind of where I live if I want to connect with people online, though I do have Facebook and our center has Facebook, but that's usually the best way to connect with me personally.
Okay, and we'll put all those links on our notes page for this episode, so anyone can look there. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate your time and talking to us, and I love learning about your space, and I can't wait to come see it.
Thank you. Thanks for all the good questions.
Have a great day.